Is the coronavirus pandemic making people mean? These days, many people are feeling easily irritated. While being sick certainly causes people to feel intense frustration, is the coronavirus pandemic really making people a little meaner? Local therapist Christy Jacob joins us now to talk more about the issue. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
So what is your perspective on this?
Naja, I believe we're living in really unprecedented times as far as such a chronic, stressful situation that we still don't really know the outcome of. So that leaves people constantly adjusting to find a new normal. In our business, we have an analogy or an acronym we use called HALTS, which is anytime we feel hungry, angry, lonely, tired, sick, or stressed, is when we're most likely to show these maladaptive behaviors of any kind. And so that analogy, we say that's time to halt or to stop and to try to really think a little bit more before we act on that impulse. So I think that everybody's fuse is probably a little bit shorter because we're not used to all of these changes at once and not quite knowing what to respond with.
Right now, families are dealing with back to school issues, the coronavirus, and all of the pressures of constant change. What is the impact of all of this extended stress?
Well, I think that we'll continue to see that honestly for quite some time because not only is everybody adjusting to the ramifications that it's caused people financially and economically, but also lots of stress just associated with being kind of cooped up and isolated from our usual support systems, our usual outlets that we may have. And so people are having to be a little bit more creative about self-care and make an extra effort to maybe get out into nature more or find new ways to create with people. And so we're going to see a little bit of that as it continues to trickle through, but also people who've already been struggling with depression or anxiety or stress in general. That's also making this much worse because the usual modes, like we were talking about before, just aren't there to cope.
Social media has been great at keeping us connected, but how might it also amplify the stresses that people are feeling?
Yes, well, social media is great for a lot of things, but one thing is it gives us an endless supply of news and of information. And so if we're not careful, we can quickly become inundated with that. And all of it's not always realistic. So sometimes it just ramps up our anxiety, but also just being too exposed to that for too long will overwhelm anybody. And so it's extremely important. Use those avenues for positive things. So look for positive content to connect with your family, to connect with friends that you're not able to see right now. But you have to put some regulation on how much you allow yourself to be exposed to all of this social unrest and all of the COVID-19 information that we're just completely inundated with.
And if you feel like you are at the point of lashing out, what are some ways that you can rectify that situation before you reach that boiling point?
Well, the key is self-awareness, as always. And so we have to constantly be aware that as we're in this heightened stress situation, that we have to be aware of how stressed we're becoming and just have that self-awareness. Then when we feel ourselves starting to become overwhelmed or starting to become irritable, to try to get a change of scenery, remove ourselves from the situation, kind of give ourselves a time out, if you will, and then just kind of go away and try to collect our thoughts of what we're truly upset about. Deep breathing is a great one that we can do, of just taking some slow, deep breaths and trying to relax ourselves.
Local therapist Christy Jacob, thank you so much for your wonderful advice and insight tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. You guys stay safe and be careful.